Good morning, and thank you for joining our Avocado Quality Summit webinar. My name is Kelly Hale, and I am the VP of Sales at Hazel Technologies. Hazel Technologies, Inc. is a USDA-funded company that offers new solutions for fruits and vegetables to extend shelf life, improve sales, and reduce food waste. Hazel Technologies welcomes you to today's Avocado Quality Summit and thanks you for your participation. We hope this event is beneficial to both you and your operations. The summit will have 4 presentations, with the first speaker being Anne-Marie Rohrink, presenting on avocado market trends. Anne-Marie is the founder and principal of 210 Analytics, a category research and insights firm with a specialty in food retailing. Anne-Marie works closely with retailers, wholesalers, and suppliers and trade associations to provide both quantitative and qualitative research on the changing nature of consumers and the food retailing business. Our second presentation will be with Dr. Stephen Sargent, Professor and Associate Chair of Horticultural Studies at the University of Florida. Dr. Sargent's current projects include mechanical harvesting, cooling, modified controlled atmosphere, ethylene antagonists, such as 1-MCP, and determining the impact of current and novel techniques and technologies on the quality of fresh fruits and vegetables during harvest, handling, and storage operations. After our post-harvest presentation, we will have a panel discussion on quality and sustainability in the avocado supply chain. Hazel Technologies CMO and co-founder, Pat Flynn, will moderate the conversation between avocado category leaders, Thomas McQuillan, Vice President of Sales at Baldor Specialty Foods, Inc., Dick McKellogg, former Director of Produce and Floral of Lowe's Foods and founder of MCK Produce Consulting, Inc., and Desiree Morales, Vice President of WP Produce and CEO of Tropical Fruit Box. Baldor Specialty Foods, Inc. is a food service distributor specializing in fresh, organic, local, and rare foods and delivers to restaurants, retail, wholesale, and other food service operators. MCK Produce Consulting, Inc. was established in 2020 to provide fresh produce industry insights and coaching to companies looking to develop strategic initiatives and grow sales. WP Produce is a family-owned, multi-regional grower, packer, and shipper of fresh tropical fruits and roots and is a pioneer in the tropical avocado market. Our final presentation will be from Hazel Technologies Director of Business Development, AgTech, Mario Cervantes, who will share information and post-harvest research on Hazel's solutions and technology. Mario has a degree from Tufts University and is finishing a master's in agribusiness at Kansas State. Prior to Hazel Tech, Mario worked at Compact Sorting Equipment and Spectrum Technologies after starting his career on his family farm in Mexico. Once the presentations are finished, we will have a Q&A session. During the presentations, please type your questions in the Q&A box below, and we will continue the conversation during the concluding section of the summit. Before beginning, we will see a short video on Hazel Technologies. Please enjoy.
There's nothing better than the perfectly ripe avocado, and with AvoLast, we are increasing that window that the avocado stays perfectly ripe.
It's going to change the way that the industry does everything.
This is win-win-win. For us, it's a win for the customer, and it's a win for the consumer. AvoLast is a product that came from a company called Hazel Technologies.
We founded Hazel Technologies with the goal of preventing food waste due to spoilage. We've created a proprietary technology platform that allows us to control the storage atmosphere. When you use AvoLast, you actually slow down and control the rate at which that produce breathes, and by doing so, we can make it last much longer in the supply chain. During the storage and transit period, we'll see extensions up to 2 weeks. Once that hits the retail shelf in ripe condition, we're seeing 72 hours of shelf life increase.
Not only does it extend the shelf life of the ripe stage, but it also extends the internal quality of the fruit.
When an avocado is on the counter for 7 to 10 days, you can expect a black avocado. But when you cut it open, you're going to see a nice, bright green avocado. And that's the difference between an AvoLast treated and a non-treated.
We are a USDA-funded company, manufactured entirely in the USA. It's purely an atmospheric control. No chemicals ever contact the fruit, and no residue is left behind. One of the most important components is ease of use. We designed AvoLast specifically with the grower-packer's experience in mind.
It's a small packet about the size of the quarter, and you simply throw it into the box.
It's an action that takes a total of about a half second.
Very simple. That's what attracted us to this product.
We don't have to invest in any new machinery. It doesn't take any additional storage space or cooler space to integrate.
Because Avolast is a flexible and drop-in solution, Avolast gives the growers, packers, and retailers far better logistical flexibility than any other technology on the market designed to increase the shelf life of avocados. It can really be applied anywhere.
Being able to throw a packet in the box means we don't need any added cooling space. You don't have the added labor in terms of the integration of the supply chain. And when you offset the savings in shrink and throwaway, it's a no-brainer.
We're looking at it as a lightweight and portable solution that can be dropped into anywhere in the supply chain. It's taken years of research to get to this point.
This was a big investment for Mission, but we've always invested in innovation.
Hazel and Mission have worked hand in hand.
We've done extensive testing over a couple of years with different countries of origin for the fruit, dry matter changes, seasonality.
We've tested across a bunch of different lug sizes, we've tested across different temperature conditions, CO2 levels, you name a thing, we've tested it. And the overwhelming conclusion is that in every single circumstance, Avolast allows us to improve quality and extend shelf life.
What Avolast means for the industry is less throwaway, less shrink. At the restaurant level, at the retail level, it allows for consumers to have better experiences with the avocado. The more positive experience that consumers have with an avocado, the more likely they are to go buy them again and again, which in turn grows the category.
It's a game changer. Avolast just makes sense. It's going to revolutionize the industry.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Hazel Technology, for allowing me to share a couple of stats on the performance and opportunities for avocados at US retail. So here we go. Before we have a look at avocados, though, I wanted to stress the larger environment of fresh fruit and vegetables and where things are headed in the first part of the year. So as you can see, all throughout 2020, the lines, whether we look at fruit or vegetables, were far ahead of the 2019 calendar year. Then we hit March 2021, and of course, the lines plunged below year-ago levels, and that was the same really across the entire store as we had to go up against those giant spikes of March 2021. But as you can see, we have started to trend back quite nicely, especially on the fruit side, which is where avocados are recorded as well. And over the last couple of months, fruit sales have actually been ahead of the 2020 levels. And of course, some of that is inflation. But very importantly, if you look at the little orange, purple, and blue dots that sit above those lines, that reflects the demand relative to 2019 levels. So fresh fruit in this case is that dark blue. And as you can see, fresh fruit sales are 16% above 2019 levels for that first half of the year in each one of the 3 years. So we're looking at an overall year-to-date 2021 dollar change of 1.2%, though volume is down by about 5%, which points to inflation. So where do avocados sit in all of that? Well, they are the sixth largest fruit within the fruit total category. As you can see, berries by far are the biggest if you look at the first 6 months of 2021. And then if you look at bananas, grapes, melons, and avocados, they're all very similar in size. And that makes avocado the number 5, but it is one of only 2 that actually saw down dollar sales. So we're going to look a lot at why that is, and inflation and deflation plays a big role there. But before we look at that, let's also look at the 3 ways really in which you can drive growth as it relates to a category, a brand, anything really. And that is, you can have more people buy the item, you can have them buy more frequently, or they can spend a little bit more per trip, either to maybe buy something that isn't on promotion, a little bit more premium, or just simply buy more during that trip. And as we see here within the avocado categories over the 52 weeks ending the middle of this year, We are still at a 60% household penetration, which is nice, but it was down a little bit. Trips were completely flat. In other words, people bought avocados equally as often in the first 6 months of 2021 as they did in 2020. And then they spent a little bit less, about 2% less. So that really, the combination of having lost a few shoppers with them spending a little bit less when they do buy them, that's what's driving that loss in the avocado category. But we also saw that big change between the big difference, I should say, between dollars and volume. And that points to deflation, as you can see here. If we go back to 2019, the average price per volume, according to the IRI data, was $2.58. We go to 2020, that dropped to $2.31. And right now, for the first 6 months of 2021, we're looking at an average of $2.28. So we see that that price has dropped, especially during that third quarter of 2020. I even double checked those numbers. Those prices were 25% lower than during the third quarter of 2019. The prices are coming back up a little bit, but as you can see, we're still dealing with lower prices today than we did last year or the last couple of years. That means that we're dealing with actually volume sales for avocados being in the plus. They're up 1%. What does that mean? It means that we're selling 1% more pounds of avocados in the first half of 2021 than we did in the first half of 2020. But because of that price decline, we are down in dollar growth. So let's have a look at that over the timeline that we typically look at. Starting at 2019, which was a very strong year for dollar sales, dollars were up 6.8% over 2018. We still had a good first quarter. We still had a good second quarter. And that's really when you see that dollar sales come down a little bit and definitely going up against those peaks of last year. In 2021, we're seeing sales down. However, if we compare the sales numbers to 2019, as you can see with the green dots, we are still selling more dollars at retail today than we did in 2019, which we consider the pre-pandemic normal. Avocado volume then, same trend line, but as you can see, those peaks are much, much higher. So even though we drove dollar sales in 2019, as you can see, we drove way higher volume peaks, almost more than 36% in that third quarter of 2020. So there too, we were dealing with deflation. And of course, a lot of that has to do with supply and demand, not to mention the fact that in the second and third quarter of 2020, a lot of the restaurant demand fell away, which put additional supply into the retail channel, which deflated the prices quite a bit. And that's some of that. The whole idea of supply and demand, of course, is still what we're dealing with today. If we look at the actual volume that is sold, so the weekly volume per store in pounds, you see that it's really fairly stable. There's a few periods in 2020, so the fourth quarter, where it drops off a little bit. But for the most part, we're looking at more than 500 pounds per store per week. And that might be a great guideline to push and see what other consumption occasions there are in order to drive a very constant line and additional peaks on top of that for key occasions like the Super Bowl or any other occasion where that avocado can shine as a lunch, dinner, snack, etc. Part of the meal. So let's have a look at the varieties. Of course, we've looked at apples before, where the list is very, very long. And within the IRI universe, here's what we're looking at in terms of avocados. Hass absolutely controls the market. You remember the total market was about 1.3 billion. So the vast majority of that is the Hass avocado. And we're looking here at year to date. And really what happens with the Hass avocados is sort of what happens with the entire category, because of their dominance in sales. But what we are seeing, just like we see in apples and in grapes, is that those new varieties are bringing some eyes to the category and some sales to the category. So things like the cocktail and seedless avocados, the Pinkerton avocados, very, very small sales. We have to keep that in mind, but it is driving growth. And that is exciting for a category and something to explore to get new consumption occasions going. If we look at volume, you see very similar picture. There too, you see Hazel avocados absolutely control and dominate that total sales number. And in this case, you see too that their volume sales was up 1.1%. And you also see great volume growth for those small new varieties that are out there. So let's have a quick look at Haas. As I said, it is by far the largest. It did well in volume, in pound sales, but it dropped a little bit in dollars because of the deflationary conditions. But in all, it generated $507 million in those first 26 weeks, the first 6 months of the year. So very solid performance by the big seller within avocados. Quick look then at green avocados, very different story. Yes, they're a lot smaller at 39 million, but here you see that their volume was down more than dollars. So within green avocados, we actually see a little bit more of inflation versus deflation, which is interesting. A couple of other insights I wanted to share with you, starting with packaged sales. What we see across categories, including total produce, total fruit, apples, grapes, you name it, is that over the last year, and that's continued into 2021, as you can see here for the first 6 months of the year, we see fixed weight do really well. What do we mean by that? Is that people just can scan a barcode. Every package on the shelf or the net of avocados, as you see here in the picture, is the same weight and the same price. That right now is driving all the growth within produce and within avocados, as you can see, whereas random weight continues to be down for both total produce and avocados. You see here avocados in random weight, so loose, pick your own, is down 16%, whereas fixed weight is up about 6%. The share of sales, it's about half-half, with about 53% of avocado sales sitting in fixed weight. Also, a quick look here at conventional versus organic. Organic for avocados makes up about 5% of the market. So it's not a huge percentage. It's a little bit below average as it relates to fruit in general, but it is generating a lot of growth for the area, all in about the mid-teens for dollars and units, and volume even up 32%. So organic is definitely an area of growth for avocados. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the idea of produce tips. People love getting tips from their produce department, from the associate, from the store, and avocados is one of the most used areas to teach people about ripeness. How do you pick it? How do you slice it? How do you ripen it at home? And those are all great things to talk with people about, in addition to all these different uses occasions that are out there. Avocados for snacking, lunch, dessert have all been huge opportunities. If you talk to parents or just really shoppers in general, we all snack so much more than we did before. And so the whole idea of the avocado within the snack occasion, not just for special occasions, but for everyday occasions, I think can still be a big growth driver among kids as well as adults. The other thing to keep in mind is that lunch is the most changed meal occasion during the pandemic. A lot of us started working from home. A lot of the children were educated at home. And lunch doesn't quite have the amount of time that people spent on dinner. So there's a lot of focus on time, a lot of focus on quick sandwiches, quick salads, and that's where avocados can shine. And of course, we also see avocados starting to make inroads in that idea of the hidden veggie. Avocado toast, of course, became super, super big. But the other thing that is starting to emerge quite a bit is the idea of avocado pudding. I did some Google searches here, and as you can see, the interest for avocados over time is very high and very stable, with some of the most recent big hitters being the Dunkin' avocado toast, the Kourtney Kardashian avocado pudding. So keep these kinds of social media things in mind. They're really starting to drive these big sales trends. And I think avocado is one of the best examples of how avocados and how a fruit can shine on social media. So that is it for me. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for the opportunity. Please feel free to email me anytime or find me on LinkedIn. I am always posting about fruits and vegetables and other grocery updates. So thank you, and back over to you.
Hello, my name is Stephen Sargent, and I'm an Extension Post-Harvest Specialist here at the University of Florida. I've been asked today to speak about post-harvest handling of avocados. As many of you may know, avocados are classified in 3 groups or races. There's the West Indian types, which originate from tropical regions and tend to have a low oil content of 3 to 10%. Guatemalan types are considered subtropical, and they are have an intermediate oil content anywhere from 8 to 15%. And the Mexican types are also subtropical, and they tend to have a very high oil content, up to 30%. Now, there are many hybrids between these 3 groups, and as a result, there are many different phenotypes or appearances, as well as flavor and color characteristics. In terms of production in the United States, California is by far the major growing region, producing anywhere from 80 to 90% of the avocado market in any given year. Florida represents a minor component of anywhere from 10 to 20%. The California types grown are primarily Hass, whereas for Florida, the season is extended by use of several different both West Indian and Guatemalan hybrids. Avocados have a very unique ripening pattern. They don't ripen on the tree as other fruits do. They must be harvested. They're classified as a climacteric fruit, which means that once they've received or achieved full maturity, they're able to ripen off the tree. They only become sensitive to ethylene ripening hormone once they're harvested. And harvest maturity is cultivar dependent. For this reason, both California and Florida have created and imposed very significant harvest maturity indices. For California, there's a minimum dry matter content, which correlates to the oil content that's required, as well as fruit size. Whereas in Florida, there's a published date and a fruit size, as you can see from this partial table below. Now, in terms of avocado ripening, there is characteristics that are considered ideal for us consumers, and that is typical aroma and flavor volatiles develop, and the fruit begins to soften at a certain point during this ripening phase. For Hass type avocados, the peel turns dark when they're ripe and yielding softly to pressure, whereas the green skin types remain green when they're ripe. The sensory acceptability of both fresh avocado types correlates well with oil content, flavor, and texture. Now I'd like to talk about marketing strategies. How can we handle these avocado fruit and maintain high quality from the point of harvest to the point of retail? Well, first of all, the fruit themselves can actually vary within a lot in terms of where their actual maturity stage is and phase of ripening. For this reason, they're often treated with ethylene gas. And this will promote uniform ripening to the tune of applying 10 to 100 parts per million at roughly ambient temperatures, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, during a 12 to 72 hour period. This will basically make all the fruit at the same ripening stage. It'll be applied prior to retail so that promotional programs can be implemented at that level so that consumers can actually take ripe fruit home that night for consumption. Once the gas is applied, though, there are other procedures that are implemented in order to delay ripening for shipping purposes. Temperature management is the key strategy for delaying ripening. Each of these three types have different ripening and therefore storage temperature requirements. The West Indian or tropical types are the most sensitive to storage temperature, transit temperature, and they should not be held less than 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? They can develop chilling injury symptoms, which relate to both flavor and aroma compromising, as well as a failure to soften properly. The West Indian, Guatemalan hybrids, and Haas are more tolerant of lower temperatures, anywhere from 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, it depends on the cultivar. Relative humidity is high at 85 to 90% to minimize shrink or water loss during transit. Now, in addition to temperature management, any other treatment is considered supplemental in that the first line of defense is cooling, followed by these supplements. Controlled atmosphere or modified atmosphere packaging is one method, and another is either scrubbing ethylene out of the environment around the crop or blocking ethylene action. We'll focus today on how to block ethylene action with the use of 1-methylcyclopropene or 1-MCP. 1-MCP is a gaseous ethylene inhibitor, and its result is it delays ripening. It's active at very low concentrations, parts per billion, and is non-toxic. It's gaseous and aqueous in terms of its formulations, and it's registered for many horticultural crops and is mostly used widely with apple, banana, tomato, and avocado. Well, how does 1-MCP work? This picture here showing the avocado ready for ripening. Ethylene can be applied either exogenously or externally, or it's also synthesized by the fruit itself internally. And what it does is it basically enters the fruit and is attracted to binding sites, which are molecules that accept or receive the ethylene molecule. This stimulates ripening action within the fruit. And so the fruit begins to change color, it begins to develop the aroma and flavor profile that we would expect. It begins to soften. Now, what happens if we apply 1-MCP to the fruit? Well, this ethylene action is blocked. The 1-MCP molecule outcompetes the ethylene molecule and is bound in the fruit tissue itself. Therefore, it delays ripening. And some of the effects that have been reported for the application of 1-MCP include decreased ethylene production, in other words, slowing down the actual ethylene production by the fruit itself, which then will delay color changes and delay softening. However, if misapplied, it may change volatile production and sensory acceptability that may be less desirable than if it weren't applied. So let's look at proper application rates. For Haas types, we can expect a delay of anywhere from 10 to 12 days with an application of 1-MCP. This can vary from anywhere from 50 to 500 parts per billion over a 24-hour period at roughly ambient temperature, 20 degrees C. Simmons, a tropical type or West Indian type, we can expect a 4-day delay with a 450 parts per billion application. Booth 7 is a mid-season hybrid between Guatemalan and West Indian races. We can expect a 12-day delay with a 900 part per billion application over a 12-hour period. So you can see there are differences here between concentrations applied and time of application. Now, the sensitivity of 1-MCP in the fruit tissue varies. It varies by cultivar, it varies by harvest time. The application concentration and the length of time, as you see above, is also important. If that application concentration is too low or the exposure time is too short, there'd be basically no effect of the 1-MCP. On the other hand, if the concentration is too high or the time of application exposure is too long, you could expect poor recovery for normal ripening. Former student, Dr. Marcio Pereira, did his PhD work with 1-MCP application to avocado. And this figure here illustrates the importance, or really the effect of 1-MCP on avocado as it related to early versus late harvest. So the black bar represents early harvested avocado. This is booth 7 in this case. And the red bar indicates the late harvest. With the control, you can see that the normal days to ripening at room temperature were 8 and 10 days. Applying a solution, either aqueous treatment or gaseous treatment of 1-MCP, delayed the fruit by anywhere from 40 to 60% for early harvest, and by 50 to about 50% for late harvested fruit. If you double the treatment amount of 1-MCP, the concentration, you can expect a delay of 100%, or from 10 to 20 days delay in early harvested fruit, and from 8 to 14 days for late harvested fruit. So again, harvest time is critical in terms of the amount and delay of ripening that you can expect from application of 1-MCP. What do we do following treatment? During transit, we can also apply treatments to the fruit. We can look at the use of controlled release sachets in individual packages. And these are designed for each specific application. In other words, must consider not only the harvest time of that particular fruit, but the variety, the expected shipping time, and temperature. All these must be considered in terms of designing sachets for this particular application. Need to minimize exposure to air currents during transit. In other words, as that 1-MCP emanates from the sachet, it needs to be contained and maintained in contact with the fruit at all times. And as I mentioned, for the West Indian Guatemalan hybrids, there's a greater effect on the early harvested fruit than on the later riper fruit. We're also currently conducting some tests with Hazel Technologies, looking at the effect of sachets on fruit. And these late season fruit from last fall were placed at ambient temperature, roughly 68 degrees. And after 20 days, this is a difference in appearance. So with the sachet versus without the sachet, you can see just a very, not only difference in appearance, but also in firmness, which would relate to then susceptibility to decay. Further tests are being conducted by our student, Morgan Madison, who's working with Dr. Jeff Brecht and myself. In summary, marketing high quality avocados requires the following: harvesting and handling at proper harvest maturity, application of ethylene for uniform ripening, and then cooling it quickly after that to the lowest safe temperature. During shipping, the recommended temperature should be maintained. It shouldn't be allowed to go lower to avoid chilling injury. And the use of ethylene scrubbers or ethylene blockers can be used during the transit time. With this, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and goodbye.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for participating in this Avocado Perspectives panel. I want to introduce you to the guests that we have here this morning. We have Thomas McQuillan. He's Vice President, of Sales at Baldor Specialty Foods. Next, we have Dick McKellogg. He's the former Director of Produce and Floral at Lowe's Foods, and he's currently the founder of MCK Produce Consulting, Inc. And finally, we have Desiree Morales. She's Vice President at WP Produce. And we're going to talk today about the extremely popular avocado category. It's going to be an exciting discussion. This is a particularly engaging panel because we get to hear perspectives from all parts of the supply chain. Growers and packers, that's WP, retail and food service. Dick, obviously you have a ton of experience with that. And then Thomas on the food service side, that's a really interesting discussion as well. So with everybody representing their own perspective, Let's get this started. I'd like to start the discussion with you, Dick. From a retail perspective, what are you looking for? What's been your experience with an avocado supplier? What are some of the key things that you're looking for? And that's independent of region, whether you're talking California, Peru, Mexico, some of the other regions and LATAM are coming online now. What do you see as the most important factors as a retailer?
Well, just real quick on my background, I'm in California again after my career at Lowe's Foods, which was in the Carolinas. Outside of the Southwest in California, avocados may appear at times to be a tough sell, but that commodity has really turned the corner in recent years. And so I think there's at retail, there's always been somewhat of a fear of over displaying the product because of the ripeness factor. So I think that's an area of growth for a lot of retailers around the country, once again, that are not in the Southwest or California, to get comfortable with the idea that avocados is an up and coming commodity. It's shown phenomenal growth over the last dozen or so years. It's not just a Super Bowl item anymore. You can sell avocados year round. But the biggest fear that I think a lot of retailers has is to over allocate the space for avocados, because obviously once they turn ripe, you could be in a predicament as far as shrink losses go. Avocados, it's a great, like I said, up and coming commodity. We promoted it really heavily from the standpoint of nutrition. It's a great alternative on a sandwich to mayonnaise. It has all the good fats. I'm not talking Hass avocado here, of course, but once again, the fear is over allocating and being stuck with overripe fruit. And my particular situation, we made a lot of effort to expand our allocations every day, and we were on a pre-ripen program so that we always had fruit that was available for the customers ready to use. And that seemed to work pretty well for us. Over the course of my tenure, we more than quadrupled our avocado sales by always having pre-ripened fruit available to our customers. And of course, that's something that you have to work back to your logistics and chain of how you buy, staging it, who's going to do the pre-ripening for you. But it's a win-win if you do that. And, you know, there is more sophistication now in the Southeast than when I went there 25 years ago. So in a lot of your metro areas, they're very familiar with avocados and what to do with them.
Now, Thomas, I want to get your perspective on this. Obviously, Baldor, you guys are supplying some of the finest dining establishments, restaurants, bodegas, you name it, in the country. How do your guys' requirements differ from a retailer or somebody from Dick's perspective? He just described some of the key factors. How are you guys different?
Yeah, so from the food service perspective, you know, the avocado is a really interesting food ingredient because for a lot of chefs, I'm 54, of chefs that trained 30 years ago, an avocado might not have even been a food product that you considered preparing. It started taking center stage, maybe not even 10 years ago, maybe even as few as 7 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. It would have been rare to see an avocado on most every menu in the United States in food service. And today, you'd be hard pressed not to find an avocado. So what's really interesting about the avocado is, you know, and Dick touched on this, the taste and nutritional component attributes of the fruit make it very interesting, but also the consistency. It's rare to find in food service an item that has a similar consistency. You might find it in dragon fruit, you find it in bananas, as Dick suggested, but other than that, you rarely find a spreadable fruit that is portable, is clean, is tasty, and that particular taste and flavor profile is really interesting for the chefs to play with. What I also like about this particular fruit item is the way nature designed it. It performs very well from a sustainability standpoint. And what do I mean by that is if aged properly, as Dick described, and if the supply chain is managed as he suggested it should be, then bring that fruit to maturation in the time that you need it, and you can sort of manage what would otherwise be wasted fruit by doing that. So that's super interesting. What I'd like to see actually is a little bit more variability in specifications, so that, you know, and that mainly is related to size and some blemishes that exist in some of the skin. It's an interesting fruit because you really can't judge the quality by either taste or ripeness by just looking at the fruit. You really have to cut into it and see it. You do get a good sense of its ripeness by touch, no doubt, but you certainly don't get that by sight. So we really need to depend on the expert agers in this to get us the fruit in its perfect state. And I think we've gotten better and better at that over the years. One of the things I find extraordinary is that it is an item that has grown by 5-fold over the last 20 years. And I wonder what comes behind that. What grows with such ferocity as the avocado? Be really interesting to think, like in 2041, will we be talking about the avocado as the fastest growing food service item? What would it be? Really curious to me. So thanks for having me.
And totally agreed on those points. One follow-up question that I thought, something you said I thought was really interesting. You talked about the generations of chefs and how that affects the food service segment. And I wanted to explore that a little more. This newer generation, if you want to call them that, how do their expectations differ with respect to avocados, and how do you guys market to them successfully?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. I think there are two aspects of it. For the modern day chef, plant-based cooking is really important. Finding produce at the center of the plate is much more common today than it's been in a long time. In most restaurants that you find in the United States, we still have a little ways to go in that space. I think there's even more room for, again, produce at the center of the plate. And so if that's the case, you're going to find more and more products like avocado, because it really dresses up a dish in a very unique way. The second piece is from the sustainability standpoint. So the fact that chefs really want to understand how they can utilize all the food under their management and glean, value for their organization, but also to make sure in that 100% utilization that nothing or very little is being wasted. And that's definitely a movement. Avocado, by nature, the way it's designed, provides that, and it really gives us an opportunity to put a large part of that product to use. Because if it's overripe, we could make a guacamole. There are things you can do with it, and chefs really want to know that they can, again, put food to use 100%. I think those are the two areas.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's always good to have options, especially at the end of the supply chain. So I appreciate those insights, Thomas. Now, Desiree, you've heard from two major customer segments and what they're looking for in a perfect avocado. It's really interesting to hear your perspective, because you're coming from the supply side of this equation. What are some of your challenges in meeting the customer expectations? And at WP Produce, how are you guys adapting to this consumer landscape that's always changing?
So our avocado is a tropical avocado. So it's not really the Hass. And the tropical avocado in general has a shorter shelf life than Hass. However, once you cut the tropical avocado, it really oxidizes at a much slower rate. So people are beginning to become aware of this avocado and really preferring it when they taste different varieties, only because it lasts longer. So you'll cut it and it won't turn black right away. You can actually keep it for 2 days. The food service industry is actually really liking it, and they're able to put it in sushi, and it can travel and it won't turn black as fast. And also with the sachets, something that we weren't able to do before, like ship to California as often as we do, we're able to do now because it gives us a little bit more time and more shelf life. Importing from Dominican Republic, also with our Florida fruit. So it's definitely a category that's growing for all. For Hass, for tropical avocado, it's pretty much all the varieties. People want to know about them.
Right, and it's interesting to hear you talk about the positioning, because Thomas had alluded to the fact that the consistency of Hass avocado, it's a great thing, but it also introduces a bit of a challenge, which it's so consistent it almost becomes a victim of its own success, and people are looking for more varieties, which I think speaks to the solution that you guys offer and what you're talking about here. That's a good transition. Desiree, you mentioned using the Hazel product. So obviously at Hazel, we're laser focused on reducing waste. That's at the grower end, exporter end, all the way to retail and food service. And we know that with avocados, depending on how you're putting them in the supply chain, you can have issues with shrink and ultimately with quality. So Thomas, I want to loop this back to you. We know that you're passionate about reducing waste and looking for all the solutions using the full potential of the avocado in this case. What are some of your recommendations for reducing waste? What have you seen be successful in this category? It's so important. It's such a big revenue driver. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I really appreciate the question, Patrick. I learned a little bit over the last few weeks about Hazel Technologies in particular. And again, I love the thinking here, and I'll tell you why. It's not so much about measuring what we waste, it's measuring what we use. So that means we need to have strategies to utilize 100% of the food that's grown in our country. We use it to feed humans, we use it to feed animals, and we use it to build our future soil system. There should be no other option for food. Nowhere in there is the opportunity to even use the W word. I don't even like to say it. And we do W or waste a lot of food because we even have a label for it. We call it food W. So we have this, it's acceptable for us to not fully utilize the food that we either purchase or have in our refrigerators or that chefs are cooking. I've asked many chefs over the years, at what point does food become garbage? And they collectively say when it hits the garbage pail. So I ask, if it never hits the garbage pail, is it not waste? And they all say, yeah, no, it's not. So is there a way, right down to the little nub on the avocado, certainly the pit and the skin, is there a way to find use? Could the avocado skin, could the avo pit be dehydrated, pulverized, and used as a powder in some other recipe? Do we know we can use the pits and seeds? We need to get curious and find ways to put all this food to use. At the very least, this food should be utilized to create that future soil system. And in that case, it's not a waste item at all, is it? It becomes a crucial ingredient to rebuild our future soil system. So I love what you're doing because the first priority should be to eat it. The second priority should be to feed those around us that need it. And of course, animals become a close third to that. And then of course, the soil. So now we're talking about 100% usage, and Hazel helps us get closer to those solutions. So that's why I'm really very excited to learn more.
Right, and what I like about that approach is that you're reframing the labels, because in a certain sense, the labels are reactive and we want to be proactive.
Correct.
That's what I like about that.
Correct.
So,
and over the years, you hear about people measuring how much gets wasted. It's a noble thing to do because then you say, wow, 30% of the food that comes through here gets wasted. Hold on, stop. How do we put 100% of the food to use? That's my paradigm shift. How do I use it all? What is the purpose of using it all? We can no longer send food to landfill in our country or anywhere in our world. It leads to all kinds of problems, which we don't have time to talk about in this meeting. But what you're doing is creating an opportunity for us to consume a greater portion of it. That's noble. But let's make sure we're always using all of it. And there's always a use for food, 100% of the time.
I want to switch over back to retail, Dick. So at retail, specifically in avocados, and specifically as it pertains to shrink or D&D or however each retailer categorizes the, as Thomas calls the W word, how do you actively control that at the retail level, and how do you work with your suppliers to minimize potential challenges in this area?
Well, Thomas already touched on it. And once again, Hazel is a perfect avenue to put a department manager or a produce director mind at ease when it comes to, can we afford to gamble with this commodity, because it is very volatile, that if you over allocate and ultimately shrink it. But this is where, once again, staging fruit, having the conditioned fruit available, the preconditioned fruit available. And then if you were to bring in a player like Hazel and say, oh, by the way, this will give you the peace of mind to let you know that that fruit is not going to go as bad as quickly as you think. But something that Thomas touched on that I want to bring back to retail is that I kind of came at this from the idea of a produce director and a produce manager. I don't want you to think that it's all about shrink and waste. Yeah, we all manage to numbers, and everybody gets that. But really, at the end of the day, you're trying to satisfy a consumer. And so the game at hand, and to really figure this out, and there's no magic to it other than just paying attention, is that you want a piece of fruit that when the consumer gets home and they go to consume it, they're satisfied. And so it is the perfect piece of fruit. It is at the perfect stage of ripeness, so that when whether they make a guacamole or put it on a sandwich or in a spread or whatever, that they're satisfied with that purchase. And then they come back and say, yes, I can trust purchasing an avocado from retailer X because this is the way they handle it. And the avocado gives me everything I want. Another thing I wanted to touch on is just the generation behind the boomer generation is coming up, and it very similar to food service. A lot of the younger people today. I read an article the other day about Tom Brady, the quarterback. How he has stayed in shape, and he said, by and large, his diet never comes out of a box or a can. And this is how a lot of young people cook today, whether it's at home or whether they go out to eat and have that expectation of the same, is they have an expectation of fresh product. I have a 30+ year old daughter who never buys anything processed. And so whether she's making a salad dressing or whatever, it's fresh chopped herbs, it's fresh avocado. And so I think this is a movement that's here to stay. And I think avocado plays into that quite well. So it's not just about the shrink and the waste. It's about, letting the end user have something that they can really hang their hat on and say, that's a food product that we can use. And I'll just say one more thing, and this may be somewhat outdated information, but it wasn't too many years ago that I read an article that said the average American family wastes, by never using it, on average about $600 worth of fresh produce a year that gets into their refrigerator or crisper drawer and never comes back out until it goes into the trash. So Thomas hit on a good point there on, use what we grow.
Right. And
I think overall, Dick, for a family, it's probably closer to about $2,000 to $2,500 a family now. Not just produce, all food, wasted, not consumed, purchased, put in the refrigerator, and just not consumed.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Right. Yeah, and I can sympathize with some of this discussion too, because I know I go to the grocery store shopping for avocados. Obviously, I'm familiar with the industry, but if you can go to the store and you get that perfect level of ripeness, then you're not necessarily buying too much or too little. You're buying the right amount, and then you consume it all when it gets to the kitchen. And so that helps complete some of the ideas that we're talking about. Desiree, at this point, we've known each other for some time. I've seen some of your facilities in Miami, really impressive. I've seen how you guys operate. What are some of the things for people that are less familiar? What are some of the things that you do at WP Produce to make sure that you guys are utilizing all of your resources and shipping all the fruit is to the fullest extent that you can to the retailer, and really making sure that the quality that you ship out is top notch?
Well, it really starts, where we grow in Florida and in Dominican Republic. It starts there, but once the fruit is in our facility, we pretty much categorize how we brought it in, what fruit got picked on what date, where will that go? You know, will it go to California? Will it go to the Northeast? Will it stay local in Florida? So it pretty much starts where we're growing. And then we decide what customer is going to be perfect for that stage of fruit. We don't ripen our avocado. We pretty much are staging as they come in, and everything is allocated beforehand. So our inventory is extremely tight. I mean, before it's in, it's allocated. As long as it's that, you know, as long as it meets our requirements and it's perfect for customer X, it's gonna start heading that way. And that's how we pretty much try and do the best job that we can in getting our retailers and our other wholesalers that freshest fruit. You know, we can't hold it, not even a day. We really try not to. And that's how we, you know, at the end of the day, the consumer, you want them to pick your avocado at that destination retailer, sometimes at their door or with a, you know, at a restaurant, and come back and want more avocado. You don't want them to eat something either that was picked too early or too late and it's too ripe. You want it to be just right. So it really starts at the farm.
Well, that's all the time that we have this morning during this event. I want to thank all the guests, Desiree, Thomas, Dick, thank you all so much. You guys are leaders in each of your own parts of the produce industry. It's a huge industry, it's a diverse industry, even within avocados, and whether it's the supply, the retail, distribution point, or food service, everyone's playing a major role, and that also applies to the sustainability factor as well. So with that, I'm going to move on, hand it off to Mario Cervantes here at Hazel Tech. He's going to be presenting a little bit more about post-harvest solutions for avocados. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mario Cervantes. Welcome again to our Avocado Quality Summit. I'm Director of Business Development for AgTech at Hazel. I'll begin my presentation by sharing my screen, and we will begin. Hazel started out in 2015. Northwestern PhD researchers made a groundbreaking discovery, putting together the concept of the time release of active ingredients from solid materials with highly effective treatments that were already in existence to extend the shelf life of perishable goods. Putting these two concepts together, of course, they began to address the challenge of food waste. Fast forward to today, 2021, our vision continues to be to reduce global food waste by delivering cutting-edge products that extend the shelf life and improve the quality of food from grower to consumer. Putting numbers to those concepts, in 2020, we treated 3 billion pounds of food and kept 270 million from going to waste. What's behind this technology? Of course, it's anti-ethylene, antifungal treatments that have been already used in the industry for over 20 years. We just made them easy to use. There's a tremendous food safety precedent for this technology, no consumer contact needed. And of course, when you're extending the shelf life of perishable goods, you're reducing waste, you are reducing any associated footprint. Today, over 15 different commodities, different crops we are working in different geographies, different regions, different seasons. I'll show you in a bit. In a nutshell, our solutions revolve around a timed constant release of actives to extend shelf life that are easy to use and that have no overhead costs. It goes without saying that this technology is USDA funded, industry proven, academically validated, in use, as I said, over 15 different commodities, and it is residue exempt. Some of these growers, some of these partners that have been seeing these results firsthand and have been using this technology, of course, you can see everything from tropicals to grapes, to cherries, to stone fruit, apples, pears, you name it. We've been working with several different commodities, several different growers, several different regions, and we're excited to continue partnering in their success. As I mentioned before, this technology is funded by the USDA. Hazel received almost $1 million from the USDA to continue developing the technology based on industry support, as well as a technical review. Other academically oriented organizations that have seen results as well include Oregon State, University of Florida, UC Davis, and Cornell in the United States. We've also partnered with prestigious institutions outside the United States, including INEA in Chile, as well as ARC in South Africa. Now, a quick note on Hazel today. Behind our suite of innovative products, our team today is comprised of scientists, former growers, marketers, retail buyers, and by being plugged into the industry across the supply chain, this brings tremendous value for our R&D teams to be able to quickly respond to industry needs while providing outreach, while providing support via training programs. That can include webinars such as this, as well as other PR opportunities. I always like to share this slide. This shows a little bit our growth in the last few years, which has been very exciting as we've been growing in different commodities and different regions and different seasons. And so it is it's truly a partnership with each one of these organizations, and we look forward to seeing what's next. Now, from a grower perspective, with so many different geographic origins and travel times to market destinations, combined with an increase in demand, today we see a greater standard for quality due to an increasingly competitive landscape. Delivering and protecting the quality of your exports is where Hazel can help you stay competitive. When it gets to the destination market, what do consumers look for? Well, they're looking for consistency. They look for consistency in color and desired firmness and fresh taste. It's about hitting that constant, perfect ripeness for consumers, the right time at the right time, if you will. Now, what does it mean to have an extra 2, 3, or more days at that ideal, perfect stage of ripeness? Well, let's unpack that and see what goes into getting that ideal ripe time. Packing the fruit at point of origin, followed by the logistics and the conditioning and the travel time, all goes into delivering the product at retail. Protecting the value of the avocado when it gets to retail is the most difficult post-harvest challenge. The goal, simply said, extending the quality time at retail and at a consumer's home by prolonging the ideal desired color, firmness, and taste. No matter where you are in the supply chain, the ease of use is intrinsic to being able to deploy any technology. This again speaks to the innovation of using actives that are shown to work and making them easy to use. In these images, you'll see the sachet being placed into cases of avocados, illustrating the ease of use. Great, easy to use. And now, what does it do? Well, the characteristics protected, of course, include maintaining firmness, retaining color, reducing incidence of scald, blackening, and discoloration. And from our partners at Mission with the AvoLast program, retailers and food service businesses can reduce shrink. Avocados had an extended ripe shelf life of 2 to 3 days. Now let's take a look at some of the trial work that we've done. This first trial was on Mexican Hass avocados, and the control groups were kept, the treated and control groups were kept at 42 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 days, after which they were transferred to ambient temperature for the remaining time. On the right-hand side, you'll see the industry standard 4 stages of external color from 1 to 5. Let's look at the results. 2 different ways to look at them. Let's look at the graph over here on the right. You can see there are 2 different groups, the control group as well as the treated group. Note by day 11, the control group already had reached stage 5, whereas the treated group didn't reach stage 5 until day 16. Another way to look at this is by showing the internal quality of the fruit on day 16. Note that the treated fruit cuts clean, right over here on day 16, in contrast to the control group, which was overripe. Again, another visual on the sliced fruit from each of the listed days. The treated fruit holds up great through day 16. Another trial, fruit traveling a bit farther. We have fruit from Chile in this case. The treated and untreated boxes were kept at 5 degrees Celsius during RA as well as CA before being transferred to ambient temperature. This was, of course, to simulate real commercial deployment. And let's look at the results. Here we're looking at what happens after 25 days in simulated transit. Once at ambient temperature, this was the ripeness distribution. Note that the volume of fruit peaked at day 6 for untreated fruit, whereby almost 80% of the fruit had hit ripeness at the same time. In contrast, the green line, the treated fruit had 7 more days of additional shelf life. And perhaps most interesting for consumers and retailers, there was a more uniform distribution of ripeness, spanning a larger amount of days. Let's take a look at some tropical avocados. This first graph here is looking at ethylene production, which slowed down when you use our technology. The fruit continues to ripen. Take a look at the images on the left-hand side. You can see that the avocados continue to ripen from day 0 to 10, right? In particular, look at day 10. You can see that the control group was already past the sellable condition. What does it look like when you start to slice open that fruit? Well, tropical avocados have a shorter shelf life, often within a couple of weeks. Having an extra 2, 3, or in this case, 4 additional days means giving the retailer and wholesaler flexibility while giving the consumer an extra couple days to enjoy a consistent eating experience. In summary, today's fresh produce supply chain has challenges. Certainly has challenges from start to end, from finding labor to harvest fruit in the field, sourcing containers at point of origin, to ensuring on-time arrivals at destination. It's a complex supply chain that allows for people in Chicago or in Moscow or in Tokyo to find fresh fruit that's ripe, that's ready to eat, even when it's snowing outside. We see Hazel helping growers, shippers, importers, restaurants, retailers protect their fruit while ensuring better consistency for that perfect eating experience that'll leave consumers coming back for more. I appreciate your time today. That concludes my presentation. I look forward to your questions. And again, thank you for your time. Take care.